Real quick, I want to tell you about something I built for you. May 14th, New York City, the Wealth Catalyst Summit. One day, 140 women who are serious about what they do with their money. Executives, founders, investors in the same room having the kinds of conversations that just don't happen anywhere else. Private markets, real estate, how to get on boards, how to buy a business, how to make your capital actually reflect what you believe. If you've been listening to the show, you already know that this is your room. Seats are limited, and we are coming up on this event May 14th. So register today at wealthcatalyst.com. Link is in the show notes. Women don't talk about money the way we should. Not honestly, not openly, and not with each other. But that's changing. I'm Shama Bunton, founder of Wealth Catalyst. And Getting Rich Together is where the conversation lives. Every week, a different woman, a different path, and a conversation that will change how you think about your own financial power. This community is growing and you belong in it. Please subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave us a 5-star review so more women can find their way here. Now, let's get rich together. I am so beyond honored to have a dear friend, Kristin Thomas. Kristin, you are not only leading the charge of building Marble Collective and solving some of the biggest problems that we see today around preservation of legacies and storytelling. And my gosh, in a world of disinformation, how do we protect sort of the authenticity of the world and the women around us? And so I'm so grateful to have you here today, not only as the founder of Marble Collective, but also as someone who has really just been a mover and shaker throughout your whole life. You know, building a career at the top of New York real estate, being on major boards, moving through rooms of powerful women everywhere. When I first heard of you, I was like, who is this woman? I have to get to know you. And from the moment that we said hello, I have to say, our friendship has never turned back. Ladies, I'd love to welcome you to Kristin Thomas. Kristin, welcome to the show.
Wow, what an incredible introduction, Shama. And I'm so excited to be here with you and sharing my story with you. I can't imagine a better person to do it with. So it's really an honor to be here. And I agree, since the first time we met, we went really deep and we haven't come back since. So it's really wonderful to be here with you. Thank you so much.
Well, everyone who's listening to the show probably knows all of the incredible things that you're building with Marble, and we will get to all those incredible things. But I'd love to start from a young girl. I'd love for Kristin, who's around 10, 12 years old, to make her appearance. Where was she in this beautiful world of ours? What was life like around her? And what was money like around her?
What a great and powerful question. So I started out, I was born in Greenwich, Connecticut. I was born to two parents that were born and raised in affluent Greenwich, Connecticut. They met in what I like to call an arranged marriage. Both of their moms played on a tennis team together. And they were very much in the culture and generation of, you know, kids don't really speak unless they're spoken to. And they just kind of went along with the flow and did what they were told. And I think they were both set up in this tennis match. And one mom was like, let's meet. And here you go. And before no time, they were dating and then married and then having kids. So it was just kind of like a whirlwind of an arranged marriage, I like to call it. And so I grew up in an affluent area that just kind of, they felt got out of control, and they felt like it was very shallow and plastic, and they had an awakening. And I think they were both like, let's just get out of here. Let's break out of here and go somewhere very different and give our kids a more wholesome and realistic life connected to nature. So they bought a farm in the middle of nowhere in Vermont, Shasbury, Vermont, on 120 acres. We had a cornfield in the back of our house, an apple orchard in the back of our house, and Farmer Fred next to us farmed it. We had chickens and goats and horses, and I had the best years of my life. I was driving a tractor in first grade. I spent my time riding my horses through our cornfield. I spent a lot of my time alone, sitting by a stream in the woods by myself. That was like my happy place and my heaven. So I was a total tomboy. I think I craved responsibility. I would get up before school and I would muck the stalls and feed the chickens. I was a little farm girl. My parents didn't make me, but I craved it. So I was very proud of this, getting up before school and doing this. And those were the best years of my life, for sure. And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I might have grown up with a mullet if we hadn't moved. But my parents decided to just pick up and leave and go somewhere totally different. And they moved to Austin, Texas. Just backing up a little bit, I think my grandparents were very much a like rich dad, poor dad scenario. My mom's family, my mom's mom was an heir to Avon Cosmetics. So she grew up in a very affluent household where they didn't talk about money. You don't talk about money. You pretend it's not there. You're very, private about it. So her relationship with money was very disconnected. Whereas on my dad's side, my dad's father was the son of a minister, grew up very poor in Florida, in Pensacola, Florida. But he found a spark of passion for a career when he was a teenager at 16. He would listen to his father in his sermons and read the Bible every night and just got into like voice and storytelling through the voice. And he found his love for voice. And he starting at 16, grew a larger than life career, starting with nothing, as one of the most prolific and illustrious voiceover narrators of all time of his era. So he built this massive career, and he and my mom ended up in Greenwich, Connecticut, one side from like truly rags to riches and the other side through inherited wealth. So it's like two very different perspectives surrounding money. My dad, and this is why I'm talking about it, my dad's career was in his father's shadow. He was a very famous narrator, and my dad did the same thing, and so did his brother. So they lived in my grandfather's shadow, and actually I think there was a lot of shame around that because they didn't have their own career. So my point is we were like kind of floating around. We went to Vermont, we moved to Texas, Austin, Texas. I don't really know why, but overnight I went from tomboy, farm girl, to purse wearing, makeup wearing, hair curling, Laura Ashley dress wearing in literally like 48 hours.
Oh my!
To fit in.
So
I went through my first.
Like, was it fun? Like, was it like, were you get this off of me? Or was it like, this is cool? Like, how did you respond to this?
I think it was like, at that age, you just want to fit in. So I think it was like shape shifting. It's like, I need to do this really quick so I don't feel like an alien. I don't think I enjoyed doing that. I was very happy in Vermont and in that life. So I think it was more of like survival. But that was my new identity for the next 4 years. And then my parents decided to pick up and move back to Greenwich, Connecticut. And the uniform for girls at that age in 8th grade was jeans, Umbros, Tevas, and a flannel shirt. So I quickly shape shifted again and torched the Texas clothes. So it was it was hard, but looking back, I think anybody that moves around a lot, you learn to really be hyper aware of your surroundings, to study your environment and to fit in, to really be able to step into any room and be okay, if that makes sense.
How at let's say like the last couple years of your, high school experience, like who did you know yourself to be at that time? What was your like inner world identity? Was it, had you reconciled all these different, shape shifting moments for yourself? Did you sort of start to come into who you were? Did you have an idea of who you were? Was it a amalgamation of all these things? Like how did you sort of identify, or how did you think about yourself and who you were, let's say before you launched yourself into university?
I think, I think I felt the most like myself in Vermont. And then with every move, it kind of like strips a part of you away. And I think I lost my sense of who I was because I was forced into totally changing my identity. But I look back to like those years in Vermont and that felt like me. And then I had like an entrepreneurial spirit from very young. When I was in Texas, I launched a t-shirt making business. So I would like make t-shirts with puffy paint and I would sell them. That was another like memory of mine where I felt like, okay, that's me. And I was like really lit up by that. So back in Greenwich, Connecticut, my parents were going through a divorce and I think I got really depressed. And it was just like, I think it was just a lot of change and a lot of instability. And so my parents went through divorce. I went off away to school. So it was just like, and I think again, I kind of found myself. Your friends, when you go away, become your family. And that was really special and meaningful and positive for me. But my parents eventually got a divorce and back to money. So soon after the divorce, my mom, who I was very close with, who had very little relationship to money, it was always there, but she didn't touch it. She didn't look at it. She didn't interact with it. It was just there. A fraudulent stockbroker literally showed up on our doorstep and he convinced her and me and my brother that the stock market was about to crash. We needed to give him all of our money. My grandfather on my dad's side, who had built this amazing career from nothing, was so proud to have created trusts for all of his grandchildren. It was like he had such pride in that. And we convinced like everybody to give everything to this guy. And within a year, I think I was in college at that point, within a year, 80 to 90% of my mom's money was gone. And 100% of my brother's and my money that my grandfather on the other side had made in his career was gone. I don't know, like what I've learned about options. So he put everything into options, which means you're betting on the stock market to go down. And if it doesn't go down, it's gone. And so he put all of everything into options and it was gone. And looking back, there was so many shady things. He ended up appearing on 60 Minutes. So he was legitimate. He would prey on recently divorced women and older people. So it's like, it really, yeah. So before I really understood what money was or the value of it, I had it and then it was gone. For my brothers, it was crippling. I think just the way that I happened to be built, it lit a fire in me. And I was like, I was in school for psychology. I wanted to be a psychologist, probably understanding, all of my shape shifting throughout my childhood. But I quickly departed from that track in psychology. And I said, how am I going to make this money back? And that was my fire and my drive. So I bought all these books on real estate investing. This was the time when it was easy to get mortgages before the 2008 bubble, and real estate investing was big. And I got that bug in my early 20s, and I started just with nothing, and I would drive. I had a Vespa in New York City. I would drive it over to Jersey City, and I would find distressed houses that were in foreclosure. and I would contact the owners who, they were struggling themselves, and I would convince them that I was this investor, and I would put it in the property into contract to purchase it. And then I would sell that contract to an investor. And I did this a lot, and I was really good at it. So it would be taking the difference between the contract that I put it in to what I was selling the property to investors. And I made a lot of money, and I started investing in real estate.
Oh my God. Wait, hold on, Kristin. Holy shit. This is so wild. Okay. So most people in their early 20s, especially in New York, are not on Vespas doing real estate deals. Me included, were down on the Lower East Side having cocktails and not even cocktails, having Jamesons and trying to understand who I am in this world. And you have the opportunity, but really it's the gumption to say, I am what I say I am. And I'm going to go into these contracts and these agreements. And I have so much confidence in what is going to happen on the other side here. And I'm going to keep doing it over and over again. The very first property that you ever did this with, what did it feel like? And were you nervous? Were you scared? Did you know who was going to buy the contract from you? How did you figure out the very first one?
So I've never really talked about this. So thank you for asking these questions. We're really going down memory lane. Yeah, it was a very bizarre situation. Here I am, this Greenwich, Connecticut girl driving over and knocking on the door of properties in foreclosure and negotiating deals. But it just happened. I think that I studied how to do it, and I was like, I'm just gonna try. So I just went into this mode of, I'm going to do this. And it made sense. And I think the first time I had that conversation, I was coming from a place of, I want to help. And I did. I was solving a problem for them. Their house is in foreclosure. They're stuck. And I'm coming in and saying that I'm going to help. I'm going to put this property into contract. And then I had investors that I had been building relationships with. It's all a little bit fuzzy, but it all just kind of came together. And I think the first time I did it, it was what? This really worked. And it was, I think I had taken some classes. So I had a teacher that was this is what you do. You do this, you tell them this, you line up the investors. So I had an idea of how it all worked. I didn't make this up, but it worked. And I was solving a problem for the people in foreclosure. And the investors were thrilled too, because here's this young 20-something-year-old girl hand delivering them deals that they can just buy cash. So it was a very strange world that it worked.
And I mean,
and then
it's also interesting because it's talk about a use of your psychology, of sort of your curiosity of how people operate and what motivates people to sell and, what motivates people to buy and really kind of understanding market dynamics and these intricacies. Had you at that point yet had any licensing, or was it I'm just going to go out there and sort of start to figure this out on my own and then sort of get credentialed later?
I mean, there's no licensing because I was an investor.
Yep.
Putting properties in the contract to buy. And then I was essentially selling that contract to investors that were cash buyers. So I was it's just, so I did this a lot, and I earned enough capital to then become an investor, and properties were going up in value at that time. That was right leading up to the 2008 market crash. So you can imagine what the next part of the story is. But by 30, I owned 15 units of investment properties that I was managing. And by that time, I had gotten licensed as a real estate broker in New York City. So I was also a normal broker in New York City while I was managing these investment properties. And then when I was 30 years old, 2008 crash happened. And so then everything started to unravel. And I was losing just because like it just, everything started to crumble. The whole real estate market started to crash. I was stuck. I had a portfolio of 15 properties. Values were tanking. I was spending out of pocket $8,000 to $10,000 a month. So I was brokering. I was, as a real estate agent, earning money just to cover these loans. So it all started to implode. 2008 happened, and it was like the second big loss in my life from that time when that fraudulent stockbroker took everything, where I was like, I've created this like massive investment business that was very successful, and it just imploded. And I got to a point where an advisor was like, Kristin, you just got to like let it go. So there were ways that I unraveled everything, selling at a loss, but I let everything go. And it was a really dark time in my life. And I just learned to like go through that failure and move on and just like kind of not look back. So I continued building my real estate brokerage career. And it's interesting because at that time in my life, I was working with a coach, and she just was like, let's do a project that's totally different than real estate. And I produced a film featuring women entrepreneurs. And it was like one of those things where she was like, just like, let's pick 8 entrepreneurs that you're inspired by, invite them to come to New York and film it. And it was one of those things that I was like, I can't do that. Why would they come to New York City to film with me? But I just did it, and they said yes, and they came, and we produced this like amazing short film. And I don't know why I did it, but it was like, it just happened, and it's like lit me up. But I moved on and continued to like do real estate. I built a big career in real estate. I hit all of my like life targets in career, but I still felt like totally unfulfilled and empty. And now looking back, I realized that I felt empty because I was just doing it to earn money. So it was like it wasn't fulfilling.
How did you, in that rebuild phase, and now having suffered two big losses, not little losses, but also like sometimes these financial losses can also just feel like big ego hits. Like, why is this happening to me? Or like, it's like, it's not just rebuilding of a bank account. It's also rebuilding confidence and fortitude and, doubling down on your vision. As you started to rebuild, what were some of the ways in which you were looking at this capital now for a second time? Was it, okay, really risk averse, and I'm going to put everything, in certain buckets? Like, how did you start to look at rebuilding the foundation the second time around?
That's a really good question. I think I just I learned to just move on. It was shattering. It was devastating, but like, you just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I think what I learned is that if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, you move on, you keep on moving, and you can rebuild. And I think just going through that exercise of becoming a real estate investor, and owning property, and just looking back and like, how did I do that in my 20s? You just do, and then it builds. So as a real estate agent and building this career, it's a real grind. I think being a real estate agent is one of the hardest careers that you can choose. It seems very glamorous on TV shows, but it is really one of the most challenging and all-consuming careers out there because it's a 7-day-a-week thing and it can really totally consume you. I really valued the relationships that the tools that I learned in building trust quickly with high profile individuals. New York City real estate is not cheap. So I had this opportunity to build real trusting, deep relationships, often as their therapist, with really affluent, high profile individuals in New York City. So that was like a gift. That really was a gift. And I learned a lot from them. I found inspiration. I realized that they're just human beings like everybody else. And I think it made me feel less intimidated by high profile individuals. And I started just kind of seeing the world, we're all just people. We all have our own similar stories.
Yeah. The before you started, I mean, it's really clear, the entrepreneurial spirit got you young, and this whole story has been sort of an unraveling of Kristin's like star sort of exploding into the world, and it's like the star is going to explode here and it's going to see where it goes. And then, I think you've got many, many explosions of this star of yours, as you are, and as you started to build your wealth back, as you looked at sort of your own investing thesis, did you find yourself, going back in to sort of buying these investment properties for yourself and sort of expanding in that way? Was it really focused on sort of the brokering side and sort of focused on building business that way? How did you sort of think about your investing decisions, I guess, over time? And were there any inflection points? I feel like sometimes there's like a baseline where it's like, okay, when I get here, now I'm gonna, make these other choices or do these other things. What were some of the inflection points and how did your investing and sort of personal wealth decisions evolve?
Well, if you go back to when I was flipping foreclosed houses, I was dealing with, guys that were really rough around the edges.
Yes.
And I learned how to connect with them, right? And I learned how to connect with them and speak their language. I'm this like young 20-something-year-old girl in very rough neighborhoods. My parents would probably die if they knew what I did. And then I evolved.
Did they know what was going on?
I don't think they had any idea. Yeah, I don't think they had any idea. I don't think I've actually ever really talked about this with them. So they might be listening to this podcast at some point. It's like, what were you doing? So as I shifted focus into luxury real estate in New York City, that was also, I was like an evolution of myself once again. I focused on high level luxury real estate. And I really embraced that role as a real estate agent and became very successful. And that was my focus. So I'm now dealing with A-list celebrities and diplomats and entrepreneurs and high level business people. And that was my world. And so it was like a totally different world, but it was one that, I mastered the art of building those relationships. But yeah.
No, it's so incredible to see again how your interest in psychology once again sort of starts to pan out as you move into these different layers of working with people, right? Along the whole cycle. It's always working with people in these really nuanced ways to help them find the thing they're searching for, right? To be able to find their identity in their spaces or to be able to get them the thing that their heart is desiring. And while you're building this career and building your wealth back, you also get married, have kids, and there's this fascinating space where it's like you are building now simultaneously in parallel, as you are starting to think about building family and, having those conversations and then thinking about your own upbringing, right? And what it was like to move around a lot. What were some of the ways in which, and I know your children are young, but what were some of the ways in which you started to think about building family and sort of maybe what some of those values around money would look like at home?
Hmm. Wow. Yes. So I met my now wife when I was in my mid 30s, and I knew I wanted to be married. I knew I wanted to find a partner. I always said to build a sandcastle together with. Like, I love the idea of finding a partner and joining forces in every way and building something bigger together than you could ever alone. And that really was so clear to me. And my wife had a very, she never really imagined herself getting married. And it was a very like kind of love at first sight situation where we just knew we wanted to be with I wanted her around me. She wanted me around her. And it moved very quickly. It was just very clear when we met each other, like, you're my person. And I think our first date, it was more like an interview. I interviewed her and I asked her all the questions. I was like, do you want kids? Where do you want to live? Like, I like you. I want you in my world. I just have to make sure that you want all the same things that I do. And I think she was totally taken aback. And it was like, I didn't care at that point in my life. I was like, I know what I want. I don't want to waste time. Are we right for each other? And it moved very quickly. I don't even think she knew she wanted kids. And I wanted kids. And now we're happily married with 2 young boys. And I was still in real estate grind mode. And it is very hard to do both and be a parent while you're in this grind. We moved out of New York City and we have a green yard and we're surrounded by woods. I really wanted that. I think ties to like my Vermont childhood. I wanted to give that to my kids. I wanted them to be able to run around and play in the grass and run in the woods. And in terms of money and conversations, they're 8 and 10 now, and I'm really starting to be mindful about my relationship with money and teaching them about investing. We use Greenlight. They have their own credit card, and I talk to them about the stock market regularly. I'm like, they are invested in the Fortune 500 companies and the S&P 500. And I tell them what that means. And it's really important for me to educate them about money because my parents did the opposite with me. So I'm very mindful about that. So 2020 happened. The pandemic shut the real estate market down. And I think it was the biggest gift of my life because I'm not sure, and I hate to say that because it was such a tragic and horrific time for the world with so much loss. But for me personally, it forced me to stop real estate for the first time in my life. And I don't know that I could have if I wasn't forced to. So the entire real estate market was shut down in March of 2020. And my world was positioned and set up in a way that enabled us to have a positive experience during that time. We had help with our kids, part of our bubble. We had an amazing nanny who just was here to support us, 2 working moms. And my in-laws were in Florida. So they lived here and their house was here empty. So I had this space to go to alone without kids and work.
Wow.
And the idea for Marble Collective literally flew out of me like the day after the real estate market shut down.
What did it feel like?
Back,
what was the moment, Kristin? Like, how did it emerge, and what was the feeling in your body? And then, like, what did it sound like when you first spoke it into being?
Thank you so much for asking that question. It had been brewing. I will say that I knew there was something in me that wanted to come out. And I was driving my wife, Fern, crazy. And like all these ideas, I would talk about all these ideas. But I was also totally consumed with real estate. And when the real estate market shut down, it was like I had this space for the first time in my life for it to come out. And it was like, I felt elated. I felt in total peace. I hadn't felt that peace in decades, grinding in real estate. And it was this silence and it was this space that just let me be creative. And it was like my creative juices just opened up and poured out of me. And I hadn't felt that joy in so long, that creativity. And I haven't looked back, honestly. So I've been totally obsessed with marble since 2020, since that day.
Wow. Okay. So another big leap, right? So your story is just filled with like big star explosions. So here's Marble Collective. It's starting to take shape, take form. It's starting to have a name. It's starting to have an identity. And obviously, similar to starting anything, right? You're entering now into a whole new space with like a whole new set of problem sets to figure out and if then scenarios and building a tech product and, fundraising and rethinking sort of what capital looks like now for yourself, both as a founder, right? So someone who's like, all right, I'm consciously putting my time and money into a product, but also, into myself, right? And into my family as you're doing that. It's really like a moment of drawing on resources. I think sometimes we think about savings and we don't realize that, well, the money is there for us to use for these things that we want to birth and create and do and have in the world. And here you are with this great opportunity to start to invest in yourself and to start to invest into this vision. What has it been like? And obviously, what you're building, and I want you to share a little bit about the ecosystem and the vision. But if you could parallel sort of the unfolding of how the product and the ideation has evolved, and also your journey as now a founder of a tech company, which is unique and interesting and also terrifying at times, I am sure.
Yes. So I think what I wanted was to create something where I was not the center and vortex of. In real estate, I was the center. I was in the heart of the business. The business relied on me. It could not survive without me. And I really wanted to create something outside of me that I could pour my heart into and build. And then almost like it can survive and I can set it free into the world as a much bigger thing than I was. And I really wanted to do that. And I love the idea of technology because it feels ethereal to me, very much like money is. It feels like energy. Like you can pour your creativity into it. You can create things through technology and it can connect people in ways beyond the physical. And I really liked that. I liked how fast it can move. Real estate is a very mundane, tangible thing. And technology just felt more ethereal and creative. Really excited me. But the reason why Marble came to be is because I was obsessed with listening to founder stories. I mean, one of the reasons why I love your podcast is you're capturing my story. You capture people's stories, and it's stories that connect us. It's stories that give us our own inspiration and creativity and give us our own ideas. And it just connects us in a way that nothing else can. So I love listening to founder stories on podcasts. I love reading biographies and autobiographies, and I love seeing primarily women, inspiring women up on stages. And I just wanted to surround myself with that. But I found it really hard to do that. It was really hard for me to find a podcast that I wanted to listen to, or I'd see an inspiring woman up on stage and then I wouldn't know what to do afterwards. Social media relies on self-promotion and constantly posting, and the algorithm that's ad driven and will do anything at any cost to keep your attention. It's hard to find quality information and storytelling and media to consume, right? It's just, there's so much out there. And I really wanted to create this space that just captured the stories of inspiring women, the life's work of inspiring women. And I wanted to follow inspiring women just selfishly for my own, creativity and inspiration. And it's like, I wanted this thing to exist. And it was an evolution. So that's what Marble does, it's a technology platform that gathers and tracks and centralizes the life's work and stories of inspiring women.
It's such a wonderful point you bring up around the editing of the content that we consume. It's something that John and I do really strategically. We will make sure that we're, listening to the podcasts that are feeding us with the kinds of information that we know we want to expose ourselves to, or limiting, sort of the kinds of TV shows. People will be like, have you seen this show or that show? And I'm like, no, we actually don't want to watch that because that's not going to be good for us. Like, how do we parent ourselves in ways that are nourishing and inspiring and actually feed us with the information and the mindset to be able to maintain not just a sense of peace, but also a sense of inspiration, right? And to help spark that fire of purpose. And so what you listen to, and everyone who's listening to this podcast knows, it's like your thoughts really impact the things in your life, what you create, what you can do, and who you relate yourself to be. So having a place like this, I think, is so powerful because not everyone knows how to edit their content, just like people go to the grocery store and assume everything in the store is healthy because it's in the local market, but that's just not true either. So Kristin, if you were to sort of, you're so young today, but to sort of project me into the future, into a young, 102, you are definitely on a path right now to be building a legacy that is far beyond, I think, maybe you had imagined this, but maybe you hadn't. What does the volumes and the books of your life, what will they say about you when you look back on your life at this young age of 102?
Oh, wow. I think that I really want to create this pure, igniting ecosystem that captures and preserves the stories and the legacies of inspiring women so that the world always has a place to go without the addiction, without the excessive content that is not good for our mental health, to go to find inspiration and to learn and to connect. I want it to be like mental health food to the media junk food that fights for our time every day. I just want it to be a haven of inspiration and legacy. I'm really excited that our technology works in the same way for women in history as it does women of today. So we're going to be reviving women leaders in history, bringing all of their stories scattered across the internet into one place alongside women leaders of today, because women are amazing. Women are our stories have not been told in the way and honored in the way that they should have. And I want to create a place where that can happen. And the next generation of women has a place to go to find role models and to see what's possible for them. I love that saying, you have to see it to be it. It's like, come to Marble and see what you can be. And I think that's what I want to create and leave behind.
I love that, Kristin. Also it's one of those things where in today's world, it's also too easy to be erased from history. And it's too easy to be removed from the sources of quote unquote truth online. And so to have a safe space, if you will, a corner of the digital infrastructure, a corner of the cloud that's there to protect and to amplify narratives and women's voices that may otherwise get erased or might otherwise be unfound. It's a really powerful moment in archiving, and when we think about archiving, we think about the records that preserve our history for the future. And so it is really powerful to be able to have a space that's being created specifically for this purpose of having a living archive. As we sort of wind down, there are two of my most favorite questions. So obviously, Kristin, we talked a lot about tragedies with money, building money, being able to buy properties, investing in your startup, building dreams. But what we haven't really talked about are like fun things with money. And so I would love to know, what is your most recent fun way that you have spent your money?
Wow, what a great question. I think I'm not a labels girl. I have a hard time buying expensive things for myself, but I love investing in experiences.
Yeah.
I like with my children, with my wife, I am really bullish about investing in experiences that we'll always remember. I'm planning an exciting trip to Costa Rica in the spring. We're going to go on a great adventure with our boys. And those are the types of things that I get really excited about investing in.
Yay! I love that. And then my final question, Kristin, is, everyone on the show, we love to rally around the women on the show. What are you calling in? What do you need? And how can we support you?
Thank you so much. So we are launching into the world right now. We are calling all of the inspiring women out there who have worked really hard to build larger than life careers, and you've achieved remarkable work that the world should see more of. Come find us at Marble. We want you. We want to capture your legacy and honor it. Whether you are an athlete, a creator, a scientist, a C-suite executive, or an investor, totally industry diverse, we want to capture and amplify your stories for this and future generations. And for everybody else who believes in the power of role models and getting inspired by others, we are open access. Come to Marble, subscribe to our newsletter. We are going to be opening access to this incredible collective of inspiring women. So you have a haven to go to for learning and inspiration from the social media grind that pulls us in that direction regularly.
I'm so happy, Kristin, that you are building and raising your torch to creating this vision of the world. It has been an honor to hear your life journey, to get to know you a little bit better, and to hear how inspiring this next volume of the Kristin Thomas legacy and life is. Thank you so much for being here today on Getting Rich Together. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Shama. Thank you for capturing my story. It's really been an honor.
Thank you for listening. This is the conversation we come back to every single week. Real women, real wealth, and what becomes possible when we stop being silent about money. If today's episode moved you, don't let it stop here. Wealth Catalyst is where women go to take it further. Our Freedom Tour salons are gathering women in 32 cities this year. Intimate evenings in homes and private spaces where women talk honestly about money, risk, and what they're building. And if you're ready to go even bigger, join us at the Wealth Catalyst Summit, a full-day event in New York City this May and San Francisco this October. Find your city and claim your seat at wealthcatalyst.com. We'll see you there.